Unit 3. The name of the topic is Stagflation. Stagflation Introduction. The term stagflation is attributed to, that means the term stagflation is given by a British parliamentarian named Ian MacLeod. Meaning of stagflation. Stagflation is an economic term which refers to an economic situation when there exists high level of unemployment along with high level of inflation. That means there is high unemployment along with high inflation. So what are the characteristics of stagflation, or what are the features of stagflation situation? So in stagflation there is increasing unemployment, there is high rate of inflation along with low economic growth. Further, it is said that stagflation goes against the conclusion of Phillips curve. This means that, students, you must have understood when we did the topic Phillips curve that Phillips curve shows inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. That means if the inflation is high, unemployment will be lowered, or if unemployment is high, then inflation is low. But here in stagflation we will find both inflation as well as unemployment high. So both are high. That is why we say that stagflation situation is going against the conclusion of Phillips curve. When the economy faces stagflation, there are certain economic indicators that you will observe to change, such as the inflation in the economy is increasing while the GDP level is decreasing. On the other hand, the unemployment rate is quite high. There is recession in most of the economic activities, and also there is poor implementation of government policies. There is a case study. The case study is on how OPEC had caused stagflation in the year 1970s and in the year 1980s. Let's understand this case study. Let's understand this case study. The most disruptive supply shock that happened in the recent history was caused by OPEC. The OPEC stands for Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC is a cartel, which is an organization of suppliers that coordinate production levels and prices. So in simple words, OPEC is an organization which controls the supply as well as prices of oil in the world. So in early 1970s, OPEC had decided to reduce the supply of oil. This led to doubling of price in the world. This increase in oil prices had caused stagflation in most of the industrialized countries in the world. So these below shows the statistics of what happened in the US. Let's go through the table. Now in the year 1974, if you observe that there was a change in the oil prices to around 68%, and the inflation had increased from the earlier 6.2% in the year 1973 to 11% in the year 1974. Further, the unemployment rate had also increased from 4.9% in the year 1973 to 5.6% in the year 1974. So this shows adverse supply shock, and this because there is high rate of inflation along with high rate of unemployment and increase in prices, clearly showing the situation of stagflation in the US in the year 1970s. A few years later, when the world economy had nearly recovered from the 1970s OPEC recession, same thing happened again in the year 1980s. So again OPEC increased oil prices, causing further stagflation. Let's look at the statistics of US. So as compared to several years from 1978 to 1982, it is observed that in the year 1980, the oil prices was around 47.8%. Inflation rate had increased from earlier 7.7% to 13.5%, while the unemployment rate had also increased to 7% from 6.1% in the previous years. So this increase in oil prices in the year 1979, 1980 and 1981 again had led to double-digit inflation. Why double-digit? As you can see, it is 13.5%. It's a double-digit inflation. And along with that, there was higher unemployment, further worsening stagflation situation. Further, in the mid-1980s, there were political uncertainties among the Arab countries. This led to weakening of OPEC's ability to reduce the supply of oil. As a result of this, oil prices started to fall. This led to reversing of the stagflation situation of the year 1970s and the early 1980s. So let's look at the statistics which shows actually what happened. So in the table, if you see, the year 1986 clearly shows that the oil prices had reduced to 44.5%. Inflation rate was the lowest. It was only 1.9%, and unemployment rate had also fallen from earlier 7% and 7.5% to 6.9%. So in 1986, the oil prices fell by nearly half. This favorable supply shock led to one of the lowest inflation rates which was experienced during that era, along with falling unemployment. So this is how the situation of stagflation was reversed and was controlled. Now let's understand what are the causes of stagflation in the economy. Causes of stagflation. The first cause of stagflation is rise in the oil prices. Stagflation occurs when an economy experiences sudden increase in the prices of fuel oil or any other petroleum products, thus resulting in sharp increase in the cost of production and leading to higher prices of manufactured products. For example, USA and many other developed economies had suffered stagflation mainly due to the sudden increase in crude oil prices in the year 1973 as a result of the decision taken by OPEC. OPEC is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Second cause of stagflation is cost push. This means that the cost of production also increases due to many factors such as increase in wages, increase in the price of raw materials as well as other inputs. Further, also due to increase in the price of new infrastructure or new capital or machinery, or as well as repair of the old machines. The third cause of stagflation is low productivity. It is observed that if the labor productivity is low or if it is declining, then it can be a reason for stagflation. Usually labor productivity is low. This is because of excessive protection which is provided to employees by the trade unions, or it can also be because of the labor laws that have been implemented by the government, thus causing stagflation. The fourth cause of stagflation is provision of variety of social benefits. It is observed that if the government of any country provides excessive social benefits, this can be in the form of excessive unemployment benefits, too much of free supply of goods and services to the poor, many food security schemes, minimum basic income scheme, and much more. So all this provides income to the poor, and therefore they are not compulsion to work. And this creates more demand in the economy, causing high inflation. On the other hand, creating shortage of goods and services, leading to stagflation. The next cause of stagflation is excessive regulation. It is observed that if the government policy is implemented in such a way that it has too much of control over production, distribution, as well as if it implements quite rigid labor laws, then this further results in less of availability of goods and services in the economy. This further leads to increase in the cost, thus causing stagflation. The next cause of stagflation is higher taxes. If the government increases taxes, the cost of production increases. This prevents the firms from producing more. This further affects the supply of goods and services, thus creating inflationary situation in the economy. Next cause is monetary policies. If the central bank adopts a cheap monetary policy, in a cheap monetary policy, there is increase in the money supply in the economy. If this happens, then this causes additional demand in the economy, thus further increasing the inflation rate and causing stagflation situation. Next cause of stagflation is deficit financing. When the government adopts deficit financing, that is when the government prints more currency, it will obviously increase the supply of money in the economy. And when this happens, it increases the aggregate demand for goods and services, and further resulting in increase in the inflation rate, and the economy slows down, giving rise to stagflation. The last cause is policy changes. Usually, especially during election time, democratic governments introduce many popular policies so as to attract the votes. So many popular policies such as waiving farmers' loans, free electricity, providing increase in the wages and salaries to the people, providing employment to the people, all these measures increase demand in the economy. On the other hand, it does not lead to increase in the production of goods and services, thus resulting in inflationary situation, further leading to stagflation situation. The next question in the topic of stagflation is effects or consequences of stagflation. Effects or consequences of stagflation. We have already understood that stagflation is a combination of high inflation, high unemployment, along with stagnant economy. Therefore, it has all the negative aspects which is associated with inflation and recession. Let's understand the very first effect. The very first effect of stagflation is that economy remains stagnant. During recession, the economy remains stagnant. This takes place only in terms of production and employment. Further, the unemployment level increases and investment level falls. This further leads to a decline in the production of goods and services. The second effect of stagflation is vicious circle. So this vicious circle starts with less of investment. This less of investment further leads to less of production, further leading to less of income. Because there is less of income, it will further result in less of savings. And this will further lead to again the decline in investment. Now this above situation, usually in normal condition it will result in a fall in prices, but in this case of stagflation it rather results in increase in the price levels. Now let's understand the effects of stagflation on output level and price level through this diagram. As you can see students, that in this diagram the level of output is plotted on the x-axis while the price level is plotted on the y-axis. Further, the diagram shows that there is downward sloping aggregate demand curve while there are two upward sloping aggregate supply curves, that is AS1 and AS2. Further, at the output level OI1, the price level is OP1. At this part, the downward sloping aggregate demand curve intersects the upward sloping AS1 curve, that is aggregate supply curve, at point A. Further, after this there will be a shift in the aggregate supply curve, that is from AS1 to AS2, that is this shift will be upwards. So now the level of output has reduced from OI1 to OI2 and the price level has increased from OP1 to OP2. So this is shown through the intersection that takes place at point B, and thus the situation is termed as stagflation because there is a fall in the level of output and rise in the level of prices. Policy measures adopted by government to remove stagflation. In order to bring the economy out of stagflation, the government may require to adopt a combination of various measures. So this combination of measures include monetary, fiscal and few other measures that needs to be implemented.